Imagine a quiet, sunlit study in the late afternoon. Dust motes float lazily through an amber beam of light. A fingertip rests lightly upon a textured, varnished sphere mounted on a brass meridian, giving it a gentle push. Swish, swish, swish. The continents blur together, oceans of faded indigo, land masses of sage green and sun-bleached yellow, wrapped in fine red lines marking long-forgotten shipping routes. For a fleeting second, as the sphere spins under the pad of your index finger, you aren't just looking at map, papier-mâché, and tin. You are holding the entire planet in the palm of your hand, feeling the quiet rhythm of distant oceans and borders that no longer exist. It was a physical object that transformed our grandest cosmic reality into something intimately human, an artifact that allowed a child in a quiet suburban bedroom to cross the Atlantic with a single brush of a thumb. Welcome to another journey into the physical archives of human memory. Welcome to Retro Treasure Unearthed. Before our pocket-sized screens offered us real-time satellite imagery and pinpoint GPS navigation, the desktop globe was humanity's premier window into the infinite. It was far more than an educational prop or a bit of study decor. The vintage globe was an exercise in collective imagination, a bridge between the domestic interior and the unfathomable vastness of the earth. To own a globe was to claim a relationship with the world. It signaled curiosity, a quiet sophistication, and a willingness to wonder about what lay beyond the horizon. In living rooms, school libraries, and ship captains' quarters, these spun spheres translated complex spherical geometry into a tangible, touchable sculpture. Yet, over the course of the late 20th century, the world on our desks began to change faster than the factories could print new gores. Empires dissolved, borders shifted overnight, and eventually the static, physical globe was quietly eclipsed by digital displays that updated seamlessly in real time. But in losing the desktop globe, we lost something vital: the sensory, tactile experience of seeing the whole world at once, completely unbroken by screen edges or search bars. History, Act 1, The Flattened Earth and the Spherical Imperative. To understand the quiet revolution of the globe, one must first recall a time when the world was flat, at least on paper. For centuries, cartographers wrestled with an insurmountable mathematical paradox. How do you stretch the surface of a three-dimensional sphere onto a flat sheet of parchment without distorting reality? Mercator's famous projection, developed in the 16th century, solved navigation problems for sailors, but it grotesquely warped size. Greenland swelled to the size of Africa. Antarctica swallowed the bottom half of the map. Flat maps were useful lies, indispensable for navigating trade routes, but fundamentally flawed as representations of the planet. The ancient Greeks knew the earth was round, and scholars like Crates of Malus fashioned early terrestrial spheres as far back as the 2nd century BCE. But these were rare philosophical luxuries. It wasn't until the dawn of the Age of Discovery that the globe transformed from a theoretical concept into a practical imperative. Act 2, Behem's Erdapfel and the Globemaker's Craft. In 1492, the very year Christopher Columbus set sail westward, a German mariner and merchant named Martin Beheim constructed what is now recognized as the oldest surviving terrestrial globe, the Erdapfel, or Earth Apple. Fashioned from papier-mâché, wood, and coated in painted parchment, Beheim's sphere had no Americas. It depicted a vast ocean stretching between Western Europe and East Asia, littered with mythical islands and speculative coastlines. As European ships crisscrossed the oceans, mapping coastlines and claiming territories, the demand for accurate globes exploded. The globe maker became one of the most prestigious trades in Renaissance Europe, a master craftsman who combined the skills of an astronomer, engraver, mathematician, and artist. The process of making a globe was extraordinarily delicate. Craftspeople worked with gores, leaf-shaped strips of paper etched with precise copperplate engravings. These paper gores had to be damp-fitted around a plaster or wood core, meticulously aligned so that latitude lines matched down to the fraction of a millimeter. Once dried, the sphere was sealed with layers of fish glue and shellac, mounted in wooden horizons, and suspended on brass meridians. These were not mere tools. They were expensive symbols of wealth, intellect, and imperial ambition, adorning the libraries of kings, scholars, and wealthy merchant cartels. Act 3. The Industrial Globe and Democratic Curiosity. As the 19th century dawned, the Industrial Revolution fundamentally reshaped the globe. What had once been a luxury for the elite became a fixture of mass education and middle-class life. Advances in lithography and paper production allowed companies to print thousands of uniform gores. Wood and plaster cores were replaced by hollowed cardboard, pressed tin, and eventually spun plastic. In the United States and Europe, firms like George F. Cram, Rand McNally, and Replo began mass-producing globes for the public classroom and the average household. By the mid-20th century, the desktop globe had reached its golden era. No mid-century classroom was complete without a large, raised relief globe sitting beside the chalkboard. Students learned geography not just by reading place names, but by feeling the corrugated ridges of the Himalayas and the Andes under their fingertips. In living rooms across the globe, lighted floor standing globes functioned as both ambient lamps and conversation starters. To turn on a lit globe in a dimmed room was to transform an ordinary space into a dimly lit planetarium, illuminating the intricate paths of Pan Am flight routes, steamship lines, and ocean currents in warm, golden hues. Act 4. Cartography as a living mirror. The vintage globe was never a static object. It was a living mirror of human politics and shifting power. To examine a mid-century globe today is to read a physical record of 20th century history. On a globe from 1930, you see vast swathes of pink denoting the expanse of the British Empire. Pick up a globe from 1955 and you see a divided Germany, the emergence of the Soviet Union, and a changing African continent on the cusp of decolonization. Look at a globe from 1970 and the new nations of the post-colonial era appear crisp and vibrant. Because manufacturing a globe took months from printing to assembly, globe makers were perpetually racing against history. Major geopolitical events, the fall of an empire, the renaming of a city, the drawing of a new border, could instantly render an entire production run obsolete. Yet it is precisely these outdated globes that hold such deep historical value today. They capture the world not as an abstract history lesson, but as it was understood and held by human hands in a specific, frozen moment in time. Nostalgia and lived experience. If you grew up with a vintage globe in your home or school, your memories of it are likely tied to touch and sound. You remember the dry, smooth texture of the clear coat varnish, sometimes cracked into fine spider webs of lacquer across the Pacific Ocean. You remember the mechanical clack of the metal meridian ring as you tilted the axis to view the South Pole, or the gentle hum of an internal light bulb slowly warming the spun plastic core, releasing a subtle, dusty, sweet aroma of warm vinyl and paper. The globe was an engine for quiet daydreaming. During long, boring school afternoons, your eyes would wander to the corner of the room, tracing the thin blue line of the Amazon River, wondering what it sounded like deep in that green expanse. At home, you might spin the sphere as fast as it could go, letting your finger drop at random to pick the place where you would live when you grew up, landing more often than not in the vast, empty blue expanse of the South Pacific. It gave us a sense of scale and belonging. It placed our tiny, quiet towns in direct physical context with Tokyo, Cairo, London, and Madagascar. It made the immense world feel knowable, manageable, and endlessly inviting. Decline and replacement. The decline of the physical globe did not happen because we stopped caring about geography. In fact, we became more obsessed with geography than ever before. Rather, it faded because our relationship with space shifted from the holistic to the functional. As late 20th century digital technology took hold, geographic information systems digitized map-making. By the 2000s, satellite navigation and interactive digital mapping programs brought the world into our pockets. Suddenly, we didn't need a physical sphere to see the globe. We could zoom from an aerial view of our own roof straight down to the street level of a cafe in Paris within seconds. Yet, this convenience came with an unannounced trade-off. Digital maps are endlessly zoomable, but they are framed by rectangles. They force us to view the world through a keyhole, focusing on our immediate destination, our current turn, our blue navigation dot. The physical globe lost its practical purpose not through a single dramatic failure, but through the quiet march of utility. As classrooms adopted interactive screens and living rooms minimalist decor, the desktop globe was boxed up, moved to the attic, or sent to thrift stores. We gained instantaneous, flawless precision, but we quietly surrendered the visual majesty of seeing the whole planet suspended together in a single, unbroken horizon. When you encounter a vintage globe today, resting on an antique shop shelf, its brass arc slightly oxidized, its ocean faded to a soft, warm ivory, it demands something rare of us in the modern world: pause. It reminds us that our view of the world is always shifting, always temporary. The borders drawn in bold ink on paper gores 80 years ago were defended passionately, yet today they exist only as ghost lines on a forgotten sphere. The object itself outlives the political realities it was created to display. Perhaps that is why vintage globes continue to pull at our hearts. They are not merely relics of geography, they are monuments to human wonder. They remind us of a time when sitting down with a spinning sphere was an invitation to dream, to wonder what lay over the edge of our known horizon, and to hold the vast, fragile beauty of our shared home in our hands. Until next time, keep searching, keep remembering, and keep looking for the stories hidden in the objects we left behind. This is Retro Treasure Unearthed.